Hello there. I hope you're doing great. In this video, I'll show you how we can create a stack implementation in Golang, and when you will implement the stack through test-driven development. And at the end of the video, we'll convert the stack into a generic. We'll use generics so that we can use the stack for any data type. So initially we will build it only for the strings, and then we'll convert it into a generic one. In case you don't know what stack is a data structure that stores data into last till first out form. The data which is stored into the stack, the last will be pulled out the first. Okay, so in the stack terminology, the storing of data is called the push operation, and retrieving the data is called pop operation. So whichever data is pushed the first, it will be popped out last. And our stack will also have an empty function that will check if the stack is empty or not, and also it will uh, have a size function that will give us the size of the stack. How many elements are still there in the stack. So let's start with the code. So I'll initialize the code with gomar mod init. So in test-driven development, we first write the test case that will fail, and we'll write just enough code into the actual implementation to pass those tests. Okay, so we'll start with that. We'll start by testing the empty function. It is giving us an error that this package is not found. So we'll define the package. So now the package error is gone. Now it says this function is undefined. So let's implement the function, and it requires a return value to be stored in the S. So we'll return a stack data type, and we need to define the stack data type, and here we'll just return it. Okay, now it says this is not being used. So let's check the is empty function in the stack. Empty function. Now it says the undefined empty function. So let's implement that as well. Now let's try to run the test. Here the test failed. And the error message was stack was not empty. Okay. So we can fix this simply by returning true here. And let's now try to run the test. Okay, the test passed. Now let's try to test that after pushing an element, empty should be false. Okay, so let's do that. And we'll push in a string. Okay, so the first error we are seeing here is there's no push method. So this error is fixed. Now let's try to run the test. So it says the stack is not empty. So this means uh, when we push, this should return false. So we can fix this simply by adding an is empty field, boolean field, and whenever we push, we'll set it to false. Right. And here, when empty is being called, we'll just return the s dot is empty. So this should make our test pass. So let's do that. Okay. So we should initialize the is empty field with true, because the default value of Boolean in Golang is false. Okay, all the tests passed. Fine. So now let's test the pop function. So now there's this error, this undefined pop function. So we'll just implement that. So this error is resolved. Now let's try to run the test. I'll just clear the terminal. Okay. So it says expected in got an empty string, and the second error is that stack is not empty. So let's see how we can fix this issue. So the first case, we can simply add another field name value, and that would be string. And whenever we push, we'll simply add a value s dot value equals to value, and whenever we pop, we'll return s dot value. Okay, so this should fix our first error. Okay, the second error is stack is not empty. Okay, so what we can do is we can change this value s dot is empty to true whenever we pop. Although, so this will fix our this error as well. Okay, so our all test cases pass. So now we'll test the size function. So that this is our error message. Expected size to be 1 and got size. So now this is a compilation error that the struct doesn't have the size function. So let's implement that. Okay. So we can simply return 1. Okay. And I'll create a similar function. Okay. Now the string, it expected the size to be 2, but it got 1. Okay. So to fix that, what we can do is we can add another fee known as size int. It should be a type of int. And whenever we push, we'll just do s dot size plus plus. And when the size is called, we'll just return s dot size. Okay. So this should pass the test. After popping the value, we can also check for the size. So now let's check this. So to fix this, so what we can do is we can simply do s your size minus minus whenever we are popping. Now let's try to run the test again. Now if you observe closely, we can omit this is empty field, and we can use the size field itself to check if the field is empty or not. So we can do is we can remove this to s dot size equals 0. So if the size is 0, that means the stack is empty. Okay. So we don't need to set this is empty field, and we can omit this field itself. Okay. So to check if our changes didn't break anything, we will just run the tests. So all tests passed. Now we'll create another test case that will pop two elements and check if the elements are the way they should be. Okay. So since the B is the last element to be pushed, it should be the first element that would be popped. Okay. So as we already discussed, stack implements the LIFO sort of data structure. I mean, the last in is the first out. And the second element to be popped should be A. Okay. Let's try to run the test again. So it failed. The V2 should have been A, but it got B. So instead of storing the value, we can store a values less slice. So when pushing, we'll just append the value to the value slice, and when popping, we'll just decrease the size and we'll return the last element of the values list. So let's try to run the test. So these tests pass. So here we implemented the bare minimum stack implementation. Now what we'll do is we'll convert this into a generic type. So for that, that's pretty simple. We need to add a data type like any, and when we'll calling the new stack function, we need to provide that data type, and the stack would be of the same type, and so on. And since we don't need the data type here, so we can ignore this with an underscore. Here we will need the data type to push the type of data we want as an argument. So we'll just let's call this type as Q maybe. I mean, we can give it this any name, but the convention is to use ST, Q, PQR sort of name. But we can give it any name, and we'll change this data type as the data type of this, right? And also here the values data type shouldn't be string, it should be the same data type passed in the stack. Okay. And here also I don't think we need the data type, so we can ignore this. No, we do need it to return the type of data we have returned. Fine. And here also we don't need the data type. So we simply made our stack generic, and all we need to do is to pass everywhere string. I'll just do copy and replace. Okay. Now let's check the tests. To ensure that these are of a generic type, what I can do is I'll just create a struct, and I'll pass in that struct inside this data. So here instead of string, I'll pass in the person type, and here it shows the error that this cannot be string. So I'll just pass in a person with the name, let's say, and let's try to run the test, and it should pass. Okay. So that was all for this simple tutorial. Thanks for watching.